A whisper in the lobby. A photographer's flash outside the Beck Tower. The lingering looks at galas and board meetings when they arrived in the same car. Hyan tried to ignore it. Michelle tried to pretend she didn't notice. But the world was watching, curious, judgmental, hungry. One morning, as they sat together at a cafe near Buckshin, Michelle's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then froze. An online article blared across the newsfeed. Hyan leaned over and saw her face in the photo, smiling faintly, walking beside him from 2 nights ago. He reached out instinctively. Michelle. She exhaled slowly, setting the phone down. So it begins. He frowned, jaw tightening. They have no right. They don't need permission, she said gently, trying to smile. You're Beck Hyan. You were always going to live under a spotlight. He hated the calm in her voice, the kind born from learning how to survive people's opinions. Does it bother you? He asked quietly. Michelle looked out the window at the falling leaves. Only if it bothers you. He was silent for a long moment, then reached across the table, taking her hand. I don't care what they say. I'm not hiding you again. Her heart trembled at that. She squeezed his hand, eyes shining. Then we face it together. That evening, the whispers became real. At a family dinner, Hyan's mother set down her chopsticks, her expression as precise as her words. So it's true, she said evenly. You're seeing her again. Hyan met her gaze without flinching. Yes. She's the same woman you left years ago, his mother continued. The same one who nearly cost you your reputation then. He exhaled, calm but unyielding. She didn't cost me anything. I let fear do that. Across the table, his younger brother, still glowing from newlywed bliss, shifted uncomfortably. Hyung, maybe you should. No. Hyan interrupted, voice steady. This isn't up for debate. His mother's eyes softened for a moment. You're my son, and I love you. But you know how this world works. People talk. Investors judge. Then let them, he said simply. I've spent years trying to live for them. It's time I live for myself. Later that night, he drove to Michelle's apartment. When she opened the door, he didn't speak. He just pulled her into an embrace. She felt his heartbeat, fast and uneven. Rough night, she whispered. He nodded against her hair. They don't understand you, Michelle. They don't see what I see. She smiled sadly. They don't have to. He pulled back to look at her, his voice low. But I want them to. I want the world to know you're not a mistake I'm hiding. You're the reason I became someone worth being. Her eyes softened. Then don't fight for me, Hyan. Just love me. That's enough. He exhaled, his forehead resting against hers. That's the one thing I'll never stop doing. In the weeks that followed, their quiet bond turned into quiet defiance. They walked together at company events now, no longer pretending it was coincidence. He'd reach for her hand in public, and though the cameras flashed, she didn't flinch. He began inviting her into meetings more openly, crediting her work and ideas in front of his board. Some resisted, some admired her, but all noticed her. And slowly, Michelle began to earn a place that wasn't borrowed. It was hers. One late evening, after a long day, they stood on the balcony of his apartment. The city glittered below them, endless and alive. Michelle leaned against the railing. You know they'll keep talking. I know. And your mother will keep disapproving. He nodded. Probably forever. She turned to him, smiling softly. Then why do you still look so calm? He stepped closer, wrapping his arm around her. Because the noise doesn't reach here. She laughed quietly, resting her head against his chest. You mean in your penthouse? No, he murmured. Here with you. The wind brushed her curls across his chin, and he smiled into them. You've made my life louder, messier, and I've never felt more alive. She looked up at him, eyes warm. And you've made mine slower, safer. I've never felt more at peace. For a long time, they just stood there, watching soul shimmer below them. Two worlds, his empire and her heart, finally learning to exist side by side. But neither of them knew that love, even the strongest kind, would soon be tested again, by loyalty, by pride, and by a truth from Michelle's past that was about to resurface. Because sometimes, even when hearts find their way back, fate still has one more turn to take. The world had finally quieted around them, not because the whispers stopped, but because Hyen and Michelle had learned to stop listening. Months had passed since they'd faced his family's disapproval and the public's endless curiosity. But through it all, something constant bloomed between them. Not fiery and reckless like their first love, but calm, sure, and unbreakable. And one evening, as winter snow began to fall over Seoul, that love reached its quiet, inevitable truth. The same one where they had first faced the city together, where he'd told her that her presence made his storms quiet. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine from the small Christmas tree she'd convinced him to keep there. The lights twinkled softly, casting reflections in her dark curls. Hyen stood behind her, watching as she admired the city. "Do you ever get tired of looking at it?" she asked. "Only when you're not in the view," he said gently. She turned, smiling, cheeks flushed from the cold. "You always say things that make me forget how to argue with you." "That's the point," he murmured. He stepped closer, slipping his hands into his coat pockets. His heart thudded in his chest, not with fear, but with something deeper. "Michelle," he said softly, "do you remember the first time I saw you again? At my brother's wedding." She laughed quietly. "You looked like you'd seen a ghost." "I had," he said, eyes softening. "The ghost of the woman I never stopped loving." Her breath caught, and in that silence, snow began to fall, soft flakes settling on her hair, her lashes. Hyen reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Back then," he continued, his voice steady, "I thought I'd lost my chance to make you mine, but you came back. Not because I deserved you, but because love gave me one more chance to learn how to keep you." He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, no diamonds shouting for attention, just a silver band with a single teardrop pearl. Elegant, timeless, her. "I don't want to hide you anymore. I don't want to prove anything to the world," he said. "I just want you, beside me, through every noise, every silence." Her eyes shimmered with tears, her hands trembling as he held the ring out. "Hyen," she whispered, voice breaking. He smiled, that rare, unguarded smile she had fallen in love with years ago. "Will you be my peace in a world that never stops talking?" She laughed through her tears, nodding as she threw her arms around him. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if time had been waiting for that moment. And as snowflakes swirled around them, Hyen kissed her. Not urgently, not possessively, but like a promise sealed between two souls who had finally found their home again. Their wedding wasn't a spectacle, though it could have been. It wasn't held in a ballroom or broadcast on television. Instead, they chose a quiet vineyard in Jeju, where the sea met the hills and the wind carried the scent of tangerine blossoms. There were only a few guests, his brother and wife, a few trusted friends, and the quiet waves as witnesses. Michelle wore a dress of soft ivory silk that caught the wind like sunlight. Hyen wore a simple black suit, no tie, no mask of formality. Just him, stripped of everything but sincerity. As she walked toward him, he felt time pause. Every mistake, every fear, every night of missing her fading into the air. When she reached him, he took her hands in his and whispered, "You're more than what I prayed for." Her voice trembled as she smiled. "And you're more patient than the man I once walked away from." They didn't read vows from paper. They spoke from memory, from every moment that had tried to break them. "I don't promise you perfection," Michelle said softly. "Just a heart that will keep choosing you, even on the days when it's hard." Hyen's eyes glistened. "And I promise never to make you stand in my shadow again. You are my light, Michelle, and I'll spend my life protecting it." When he kissed her, the wind seemed to still. The waves rolled quietly against the shore, as though the world itself had bowed to their love. That night, they sat barefoot by the sea, their wedding shoes abandoned in the sand. Michelle leaned her head against his shoulder, watching the moon shimmer across the water. "Do you think we made it?" she whispered. He smiled, threading his fingers through hers. "No," he said. "We're still becoming." She looked up at him, her smile soft and full of love. "Then let's keep becoming together." He kissed her forehead and whispered, "Always." And there, beneath the endless stars and the gentle rhythm of the ocean, Beck Hyen and Michelle began the quiet forever they had once lost. Not a perfect one, but a real one, built on love that had survived distance, disapproval, and time itself. The years that followed weren't a fairy tale. They were something better, real. Love didn't always look like candlelight and roses. Sometimes it looked like late-night calls from boardrooms, quiet breakfasts before flights, and laughter echoing in the kitchen after a long, tiring day. But through it all, Beck Hyen and Michelle learned the rhythm of forever. Not in grand gestures, but in the gentle, daily choosing of one another. The Beck residence was alive with warmth and sunlight. Michelle stood in the kitchen, hair tied loosely, wearing one of Hyen's shirts as she stirred coffee. The smell of vanilla and cinnamon filled the air. From the living room came the sound of soft giggles. Their little daughter, Hannah, playing on the carpet with blocks. Hyen walked in quietly, his suit jacket still draped over one arm. He stopped for a moment watching them, the two people who made every meeting, every billion-dollar decision, seem small. "Running late again?" Michelle teased without turning. He smiled. "You say that like it isn't every morning." She handed him a mug. "Then maybe you should stop scheduling 7 a.m. meetings." He took it, his hand brushing hers, lingering just a little longer than necessary. "If I did, I'd never leave home." She looked up, eyes bright with that same warmth that had once melted his world. "Would that be so bad?" He bent down and kissed her forehead. "Maybe not." Later that day, after work, they met at Hannah's preschool recital. The stage was small, decorated with paper flowers and tiny stars. When Hannah spotted them in the crowd, her face lit up, and in that instant, Hyen felt something he hadn't known he was missing. Not power, not success, just peace. Afterward, Michelle carried their daughter in her arms as they walked through a nearby park. Cherry blossoms floated down like pink snow, clinging to Hannah's curls. "She looks like you," Hyen said softly, his hand resting on Michelle's back. Michelle smiled. "She has your eyes. And your courage," he added. "She's not afraid of the world. Because she'll never have to face it alone," Michelle said, looking up at him. He stopped walking, turning her gently toward him. "Neither will you." The wind carried petals between them, landing in her hair like a crown. Hyen brushed them away and whispered, "When I was young, I thought love was something to conquer, something you had to control." Michelle tilted her head, smiling softly. "And now," he smiled, his eyes tender, "now I know love isn't conquered. It's lived. Every day in the small things, in the mornings you make coffee, in the way you hold our daughter, in the way you remind me that I'm more than what the world expects." Her heart swelled. "And you remind me that I'm allowed to dream without apology." That night, after Hannah had fallen asleep, they sat together on the balcony, just as they used to years ago, before the world knew their names together. The city lights glowed like distant stars. Michelle rested her head on his shoulder. "Have you ever thought about how far we've come?" He nodded, eyes on the horizon. "Every day. I used to think I'd lost you for good. Now I can't imagine a life where you're not beside me." She smiled. "We didn't just find love again, Hyen. We built it." He turned to her, brushing his thumb against her cheek. "And we'll keep building, as long as I breathe." Their lips met, slow, certain, full of history and hope. Down the hall, their daughter stirred, then settled again, her tiny hand clutching the corner of her blanket. Outside, the night deepened, quiet and safe. And on that balcony overlooking Seoul, the same city that had once tried to separate them, Beck Hyen and Michelle sat wrapped in the gentle kind of love that doesn't need to be seen to be believed. Because the truest love isn't the one shouted from rooftops. It's the one whispered in kitchens, held in laughter, and carried in silence. It's the one that endures through distance, through doubt, through time itself. When their eyes met again, it wasn't fate giving them a second chance. It was love, reminding them that some souls are never meant to stay apart. The non-profit organization they had built together, born from a shared dream, to make opportunity as universal as love. Michelle stood at the podium of the opening ceremony, her elegant voice carrying across the hall. Behind her, banners read, "Bridging worlds, building hope." Her words were calm and sure. "We started this not to prove what love can survive," she said, glancing at Hyan, who stood a few feet away, "but to show what love can create when it's given the freedom to grow." The crowd, a mix of business leaders, scholars, and young dreamers, listened, moved by the quiet power in her tone. When she finished, Hyan stepped beside her, his hand finding hers naturally. "She taught me that success isn't about control," he said softly into the microphone. "It's about connection. Every company I built gained value, but she gave it meaning." The room filled with applause, not for the billionaire, but for the man who had learned how to love without armor. Later that evening, after the event, they stood by the river where Seoul's skyline glittered in gold. Michelle leaned against the railing, her curls brushing her face as the wind swept by. "Do you ever think about the man you were when I met you?" Hyan smiled faintly. "Too much. And the woman I was?" He turned toward her. "I remember her. Brave, beautiful, but afraid to believe that love could last." She met his gaze. "And now?" He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his voice low and steady. "Now, I don't remember a version of my life without you in it." She smiled, tears welling softly. "We really made it, didn't we?" He nodded. "We didn't just make it. We made something new." Their foundation soon expanded beyond Korea, reaching Kenya, Nigeria, and Ghana, where Michelle led initiatives for women in business and education. Hyan would travel with her when he could, watching her speak to young girls who saw her as proof that dreams didn't have borders. He loved the way her eyes glowed when she spoke about change. The same fire that once drew him in was now lighting the world. And every time they stood on a new stage, hand in hand, they silently remembered where it all began. At a wedding, two lost hearts locking eyes after years apart. Their daughter Hannah was now taller, her laughter still bright, chasing fireflies in the garden. Michelle sat with Hyan on the same beach where they'd said their vows years ago. The waves sang softly against the shore. "Do you ever wonder what our story looks like from the outside?" she asked. He chuckled. "Probably impossible. A billionaire and the woman who taught him what love means." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Then I hope they see what I see. Not money, not fame, but two people who chose each other again and again." He looked out at the horizon, the line where the sea met the sky, endless and calm. "That's the thing about love," he said. "When it's real, it doesn't end. It just changes shape." She smiled. "Like us." He kissed her forehead. "Exactly like us." The sea breeze wrapped around them, warm and gentle. The stars began to appear one by one, their light steady, unwavering, just like the love that had carried them through every season. Their love had begun with heartbreak, rebuilt through courage, and endured through time. Together, they turned pain into purpose, distance into devotion, and passion into peace. In every city they touched, in every life they changed, their story remained the same. A reminder that true love doesn't demand perfection. It only asks for two hearts brave enough to keep choosing each other. And Hyan and Michelle, they never stopped choosing. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment. Also like, share, and subscribe to my channel and click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is uploaded.